But there's a lingering issue here, because a lot of people say to me, they say, what's all this long-term thinking all about? It's so difficult and governments are so hopeless. Why don't we just have benign dictators come along and sort it all out for us? What we really need, many people say, are enlightened despots. And there is a growing movement of people believing this on both the left and right, the green and the non-green. Well, that's an interesting idea to think about, isn't it? Is it actually true that authoritarian governments are better at delivering on long-term public policy goals? And one might intuitively think, yes, or just look at China. Aren't they great at long-term green infrastructure investment? Or look at Singapore. Aren't they fantastic at their long-term investment in housing and public healthcare? So I thought about this and thought, well, let's look at the evidence. And in my book, The Good Ancestor, I actually look empirically at whether dictatorships perform better than democracies when it comes to long-term thinking. And the way it's done in the book is that I draw on a new index of intergenerational solidarity developed by a statistician called Jamie McQuilkin. This is, I think, the best long-term index in the world. And it has 10 different indicators from 3 different areas which are put together. So there are environmental indicators such as the amount of renewable energy in the system. There are indicators of social matters such as investment in healthcare, and then there are economic indicators such as inequality. They're put together into a single number, and then 122 countries are ranked. And in the rankings, you can see that the top performing countries in the world are places like Iceland and Sweden, but also many non-wealthy countries such as Nepal or Sri Lanka. And of course, you can't see China there. China's down at number 25. The UK is 45. The United States is number 62. So there's a lot of variability in terms of long-term policy performance. But then there's the question of, well, how do these perform when it comes to democracy and dictatorship? Well, have a look at this. This scatter plot shows the Intergenerational Solidarity Index on the bottom axis, and on the y-axis going upwards is a measure of democracy called the VDEM Liberal Democracy Measure. And what you see there is that the little dots of countries cluster in the top right and the bottom left. That means the more democratic you are, the more long-term your public policy is going to be. And the less democratic you are, the less long-term your public policy is going to be. In fact, of the top 25 countries on the Intergenerational Solidarity Index, 21 of them are democracies. Of the 25 bottom-scoring countries on the Intergenerational Solidarity Index, 21 of them are autocracies. And I think this really puts an end, in a way, to that benign dictatorship argument. There is no systematic empirical evidence that autocracies outperform democracies when it comes to long-term public policy. In fact, quite the opposite. And this is not saying that democracies can rest easy. They all need to deepen their democracy and inject more long-term thinking into their decision-making. But certainly the idea that a dictatorship is going to solve all our problems is something that we have to, I think, leave to the dustbin of history.